Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's construction clinic. For those of you who haven't been on these sessions before, my name's Nina. We usually start with a housekeeping presentation, an introduction to the Institute, and then we get into today's questions. I see there's a lot of familiar names on the session today, so I'm not going to labour the points too much, but just for those of you who aren't familiar, you should see a control panel on your screen. There's a hand icon that looks something like this. If you have any issues with audio, just raise your hand. I'll send you a message, see if I can help you out. Today is all about questions, so if you have any questions, please send them through your question box here. The only thing we ask is that you send them through in one complete message rather than 2 or 3 messages for the same question. It just helps me field them across to the presenters. Okay, so the ICCP, for those of you who haven't heard of us before, what is it? Well, we are a professional members organisation and we recognise those with skills, qualifications and expertise in the professional management of construction claims. We've got 3 main objectives, and those are to establish international professional standards for the management of claims, to give recognition to those who have gained the appropriate knowledge and experience in the management of claims, and also to help and educate those who would like to gain this experience. So very briefly, we offer membership at 3 levels: associate, member and fellow. All of the details are on the website. I'll give you the link shortly. The only thing that I'd like to emphasize here is whichever membership level you are eligible for, we do offer concessionary fees for members resident in certain countries, and all of that information is on the website as well. And that would be a 50% reduction in all fees as part of your application. Okay, so if you've been with us for the past few weeks, we've been highlighting particular areas of the Institute. We've focused on membership and each of the levels and the routes to membership over the past few sessions. This week, we'd like to start highlighting benefits, starting with Cpd Webinars. So we hold regular webinars for members. We've been doing this since 2018. I know that now with lockdown and lots of people working from home, there's been a surge in webinars recently. I think everybody is completely webinared out, but we've been doing it for a long time. At the moment, we've got 30 webinars in the members area. All of the recordings are saved, so if you happen to join the Institute this year, for example, all of those webinars are in your members area available to watch. We also provide the presentations and any associated resources that go along with the sessions available to download. The general format is a 45-minute presentation, a 15-minute Q&A, and that would give you 1 hour of CPD and a certificate, whether you watch the session live or go back and listen to a recording later. And just whilst we're here for everybody's benefit, just to show you what that actually looks like. So I've just got the members area up on screen here. You can ignore that black bar at the top, that's my admin bar. But you'll see the list of webinars. So going back to 2018 when we started, we've got contract administration for claims, types of claims and procedures, the essential elements of a successful claim. If we skip forward a few months, how to keep it simple when you're writing a claim, changes from 99 to 2017 FIDIC Red Book when that came in back in at the end of 2018. Delay analysis methods, selecting the best contract for your project. And if we scroll right down to most recently, we've also got all of the construction clinics in here, plus a couple of members webinars that we did on coronavirus, what to do in periods of suspension or delay. And I believe there was another one, whether the contractor is entitled to claim, looking at coronavirus in construction. So you'll see all of those are in there ready for you to watch and download. Okay, and on the topic of webinars, I noticed we've got quite a few members and we're trying to get this information out to as many members as possible at the moment. If you are a member, I'm delighted to announce that we have Dr. Cyril Churn next week. He's going to be doing a talk on how to make sure you are paid on time every time. something that many will be concerned with at the moment. We're very, very lucky to have Dr. Churn with us next week. He's extremely qualified, extremely engaging as a presenter. He really knows what he's talking about. He's a barrister, structural engineer, chartered architect and author. He specialises in complex engineering and construction projects. As you can see, I've had to really condense this slide with all of his qualifications, and this isn't nearly half of what he's actually qualified to talk about. All the details you'll find on his websites here. He's an extremely good speaker. He's been recognised within the legal profession and in the construction profession. We're very lucky to have him. So please, if you haven't registered for that yet, join us next week, the 8th of June at 10 o'clock UK time. You'll also receive a reminder invitation going out tomorrow. So check out your emails and make sure you click the registration link. Okay. Right, so if you'd like any more information about anything that you've heard there, all of the details are up on the website. You can contact me. I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you'd like to discuss membership, you'll also find a membership email there. Submit your queries and my colleague Jennifer will get back to you. Okay, so on to today's clinic. We're delighted to welcome back Andy Hewitt, as you'll probably know by now, is our Executive Officer. Andy is a FIDIC contracts and claims expert. He's also the author of 2 well-known industry books on contracts and claims. And we're also joined today by Mark Watson. Mark is a planning, delay analysis and claims specialist. He's also an expert witness and mediator. And he's also an ICCP fellow and newly voted in steering committee member as of January this year. Okay, so on to today's questions, and I'm going to hand over to Andy, who's going to kick things off for us.
Right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Nina. Just to underline what Nina said about Cyril, Dr. Churn, members, if you can attend this, I can guarantee that it's going to be a good session. So please do what you can, and if you can't attend it live, I suggest that you do watch the recording later. As Nina's already said, not only is Cyril very qualified, but he's a very, very engaging speaker. So I think you'll be entertained, as well as find out some interesting information. So on to this week's clinic, and I want to go back to a question that was raised last week and fell between the cracks of myself and Lee, and it's been submitted by Declan Scully, and it's related to the contractor's entitlement to compensation for costs, which Declan's described as non-task related. For other people's benefit that may be not familiar with that term, generally regarded as time-related costs or prolongation costs. So these are the costs that the contractor incurs through having to keep his site management and admin staff, his site officers, the engineer's officers, his tower crane, the generator, non-productive plant, on the project for the extended period for which has been awarded an extension of time. Non-task related costs, time related costs, prolongation costs, essentially they all mean the same thing. Now Declan has asked for 2 separate scenarios to be considered, and rather than reading out the questions, I'll just give you the background. This is a project where the contractor, the engineer, the employer, delays have occurred. There have been some concurrent delays with the contractor and the employer, or responsible delays. An extension of time has been agreed between the parties, and Declan's question relates, how do we then calculate the prolongation costs? And he's asking us to look at this from both a retrospective agreement on the extension of time, so we're looking backwards, possibly after the project's been completed, and also from a prospective calculation of the extension of time. This is where we know the delays occurred, we know when it's ended, and we can fairly and reasonably calculate and agree what the extension of time should be, even though the project's not completed yet. And this, of course, is the way to deal with claims, not waiting until we see what happens and the project's completed. And in actual fact, is a requirement from most forms of contract. So in order to illustrate this, I've prepared a few facts and figures to use as an example. So Nina, if you wouldn't mind putting those on the screen, and we'll just go through a little example which will help me to explain things. So on this project, there was an employer delay from the 20th of January to the 10th of March, a period of 51 days. There was also a contractor's concurrent delay for 10 days between 1st of February and 10th of February. I want to take a minute here to just explain about concurrent delay. It's a popular misconception that concurrent delays are an employer responsible delay and a contractor responsible delay that occur at the same time. This is only partly correct. For them to be truly concurrent, both the contractor's delays and the employer's delays have to affect the time for completion. So if there's an employer's delay that's on the critical path or affects the critical path and affects the time for completion, and the contractor's working in a different area and is just slow, is late, but that is not a critical activity and doesn't affect the time for completion, that is not concurrent delay. It's just two delays occurring at the same time. But on Declan's project, let's assume that this is true concurrent delay in that both contractor and employer responsible delays affect the time for completion, and that was for a 10-day period. We've agreed on either a retrospective or a prospective extension of time of 30 days. Why is it not 51 days? Well, there's going to be float in the program, and we've got to consume the float for that 51 days of delay in January to March to effect the completion date by 30 days. So, hopefully to answer Declan's question, what is the entitlement to the contractor's prolongation costs or non-task related costs? Well, it's 30 days because the contractor is obliged to remain on site for 30 days extra due to the employer's delay, less the 10 days of concurrent delay for which he can have time but can't claim costs because the contractor contributed to the delay there. So it can claim time-related costs for 20 days. How does he calculate those costs? Well, it's when the damage to the contractor actually occurred, which is during the time of delay. So it's sometime between the 20th of January and the 10th of March. So the period to evaluate the prolongation costs is in this same period. So what resources did we have on the site in terms of management and admin staff, in terms of site establishment, in terms of non-productive plant, etc., has got to be during that period. And you can either do it a really, really complicated way and calculate the cost for each day between the 20th of January and the 10th of March, and then apply a pro rata to that for 20 days, or you can do it the easy way, which will pretty much come out with the same sort of answer with a lot less work, and it's a lot easier for the respondent to reply, and find out the midpoint between 20th of January and 10th of March, which is sometime around about the 20th of February. See what resources you had on site on the 20th of February, calculate your daily costs for each of your resources, multiply it by 20 days. That is your entitlement or your prolongation cost claim. And it really doesn't matter, Declan, whether this is a prospective one or a retrospective analysis. It really doesn't matter. The answer is the same for both scenarios. So I hope that answers your question. Good question as well, Declan, because I've come across many cases where the contractors don't understand it when I've been reviewing claims on the employer's behalf, and they just get it wrong. And it's the same when we are working for the contractor. The engineers who are responding to the claim don't understand it either. So it's a common misconception and misunderstanding throughout the industry as a whole. So moving on to the next question for me, which is from Mufras Ismail, and it's quite a short one, so I'll read it out. A client delays the advance payment from the stipulated period in the contract. Due to that, the contractor struggles to finalise his subcontractors, and this severely affects the construction activities. Now, if generally the contractor needs to pay advance payments to his subcontractors in order to get them to mobilise, so any non-payment by the clients will not allow him to do that, and many of the subcontractors will be within their rights to say, I'm not coming to site, I'm not starting any engineering until I've got my advance payment. So yeah, it does have a knock-on effect. Is the contractor entitled to claim the additional money in accordance with the commercial bank interest rate for the delayed period? Well, Ismail, Mufras, it depends on your contract. And please, when you are submitting questions of a contractual nature, it does help if you could tell us what contract you are referring to. But if we take FIDIC as an example, for any payment that the employer makes late, the contractor is entitled to claim for financing charges. And FIDIC actually explains in, and I can't remember the clause number, it's 16 point something, the mathematics and how those financing charges should be claimed. And the last part of the question, are there any opportunities to claim an extension of time to the innocent contractor? Well, yeah, the contractor would be innocent in this case. Yes, and if, again, it doesn't really matter what form of contract, but if you can demonstrate that the failure to make the advance payment actually delayed you by your subcontractors not mobilizing or starting engineering by the date that your program needed them to do, you will be entitled to an extension of time. And the best way to hang this on, again, if it's FIDIC, would probably be clause 8.4e, delay, impediment or prevention by the employer or the employer's agent. So yes, you do have an entitlement to an extension of time, and I would also link that to an entitlement to prolongation costs as well. So that's it from me. I hope that's answered your question, Mufraz, and I'd like to hand over to Mark now, please.
Thank you, Andy, and good afternoon, everybody. I'll be responding to two questions or two scenarios submitted by Ernst Erasmus. And in the first scenario, Ernst paints the following picture. He says, when it comes to notice provisions and time barring, we set the following scenario. FIDIC Red Book, 1999 edition. The commencement date set in the contract data is set at 11 May 2020. There's no letter of acceptance. Before I proceed, I want to talk about letter of acceptance. If there is no letter of acceptance, then your contract agreement becomes your letter of acceptance. And the date of the issue of your letter of acceptance will then be the date that the contract agreement has been signed by the parties. Okay? The contract was signed on the 22nd of May 2020. So in this scenario, the letter of acceptance would also be issued on the 22nd of May 2020. The event started on the 3rd of May 2020. This event started before the commencement date. There is two important dates that we need to understand. and important dates are commencement date and time for completion date. Before I continue that, I will just finalize your question. In instances where events happen before the contract finalization as above, do you set the become aware date as a commencement date, contract signing, or actual date when the event happened pre-contract? As I stated earlier, your letter of acceptance becomes your contract date, award sign date. Now, in order to establish or to calculate the extension of time for completion under subclause 8.4, you need to consider your commencement date and your time for completion dates under your contract. Now, I would not utilize terminology such as become aware date, because become aware date has got no relevance within the conditions. I would use specifically the wording that is found in the documents. Now, in the circumstances where the event occurred before 3rd of May 2020, it could be that there was a limited notice to proceed. However, it is also very highly unlikely to occur in a FIDIC contract. Now, what I would do is I would install a contract data, a WBS, and I would install a delay work breakdown structure within my actual program. So I would record my letter of acceptance date, my contract signature date. I would record the date of the events. Now, your event will only have an effect from the 11th of May 2020. Why? Because 11th of May 2020 is the actual commencement date. So what happens prior to that doesn't necessarily push out the commencement date, because your commencement date doesn't get pushed out. Your time for completion date will get pushed out, and therefore you would set your event from the 11th of May 2020 and not record it as the 3rd of May 2020. But also you got to understand also that when you insert a contract signature date, even though it happened after the fact, the contract signature date should not be driving a critical path, because it will not be a realistic indication of what's taking place. So your contract completion date will be more like seems that it will be more like a milestone in the program, and it will not drive anything outside of your contract data milestones. You're just going to be careful how you link it into the program, and you don't unnecessarily link it to drive completion on the project. The second question from Ernst is, in this scenario, it's a FIDIC book, 1999 edition. Contract executed in the DRC, which is Democratic Republic of Congo, due to start site study on the 20th of June 2020. The employer initiated a compulsory 2-week self-quarantine on site for all personnel coming onto site. Under which subclause can the contractor possibly claim costs? Now, Ernst, a 2-week quarantine when you come onto site for site study will not necessarily delay the time for completion or extend the time for completion. The reason being is that normally when you come into a remote site, you've got to submit your health and safety plans. It's got to be approved. You've got to submit your method statements under the 8.3. You've got to submit your 8.3 program, and that normally takes about anywhere between 28 days or even longer. So there are some works that can be done within that quarantine period. Not necessarily be physical work on site, but there can be some non-physical activity that can take place, as I mentioned before. So before you go and rush onto a claim, you've got to consider what is the impact, what is the effect of my 2-week quarantine on my time for completion. And normally you will find that it won't have much effect. Now, in the circumstance that it does have an effect, you could probably raise your claim on the 2 different subclauses. One is subclause 8.6, and that deals with the rate of progress. Now, you could the quarantine could affect your rate of progress. The reason being is that your 8.3 program would set out how you plan to execute the works. If you did not make provision for a 2-week quarantine period, you are introducing an event in this program that could delay you from meeting the dates set out in your 8.3 program. And under those conditions, you would then submit your claim on 8.6. The other option would be under 8.9, which is that deals with consequences of suspension. You could argue that your works was suspended due to the 2-week quarantine. However, I'd be very cautious to use that because, as I said previously, you would be able to undertake other tasks that will not have a made-up effect, or you could use it to mitigate, but it may not necessarily have an effect on the time of completion. So you've got to consider very carefully, and you've got to do a delay analysis to establish what happened. You cannot just, off the cuff, I would automatically consider, I've got a 2-week quarantine, therefore this will automatically result in a delay. You have got an obligation to mitigate the effects of those events. All it means is that your 8.3 program is going to be updated on a more regular basis. You're going to have to use a lot more factual data to update that program. You're also going to have to look at rate of progress, productivity issues, and those type of things. And all I can say there is, what is important there is going to be is documentation, documentation, documentation. Yep. The final question I have is from Mohammed Fazal. Mohammed's question is, under the FEDIC 1999 Red Book contract, the employer delayed contractor interim payments and extension of time for the period of delay granted. My questions are, Mohammed, before I go to your questions, I think it's best that we unpack your scenario here. So the first part of the scenario deals with an employer delayed interim payments to the contractor. Now, the remedy for delayed payment to the contractor would sit under subclause 14.8, which talks about deals with delayed payment, and the contractor in that circumstances will be entitled to receive financing charges compounded monthly on the amount unpaid during the period of delay. Now, that period of delay refers to the delayed payment period, and not necessarily to a delay, an event that's causing a delay to the time completion. The contractor will be entitled to this payment without any formal notices or certification. So he doesn't have to raise another notice or another certification in terms of that. The second part of the scenario relates to an extension of time for a period of delay granted. Now, I'm assuming that an extension of time for completion claim was submitted under subclause 8.4e and relates to any delay, impediment, or prevention caused by and attributable to the employer. Now, turning to your question, the first question is, does the contractor need to issue a notice for a prolongation cost claim under subclause 20.1 after he became aware of this event as prescribed under subclause? You got a question up there. And if he fails to do so in the 28 days, does that contractually affect the contractor's later entitlement? The contractor's remedy under subclause 14.8 is separate to the remedy to claim for an extension of time and additional payment under subclause 20.1. Under common law jurisdictions, a contractor may be time bound, whereas under civil law jurisdiction, a different approach may well be adopted. But it's always good practice to submit your claim within the periods prescribed by the contract. The second part of the question is, what is the best time to submit a prolongation claim? Is it in the middle of the extension of time, or should it be at the end of the project with the total prolongation cost? Or is it better to be in monthly intervals? Mohammed, the best time to submit a prolongation claim is under those requirements set out under the contract, that is sub-clause 20.1, and any amendments provided under particular conditions of contract. To that extent, that the claim has a continuing effect, the contractor is to provide its interim claims at monthly intervals. I would always advise you to follow the contract. It's always best practice because it avoids unnecessary disputes further down the line. That is all the questions I have today. Thank you. Back out to Nina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm not sure how it was for everybody else, but the sound was a little bit muffled today. So we've just been talking offline about doing written responses for anybody that couldn't hear. If you would like a written response to the questions you've heard today, could you all just raise your hand, please? And if there's enough people that would like that, then we'll prepare it and pop it up on the website for you to download. Okay, there's a few hands going up. I'll just let you give me your response over the next minute or so. Whilst that's going on, just like to say thank you to Andy and Mark for hosting the session today. Thank you to everybody who's joined us. If you're not a member, I do hope you will consider joining. We are growing month on month and the community is building. So do check out membership, get in touch if you've got any questions. The clinic will be back again next week. And again, members, if you haven't registered for that webinar on the 8th, please do sign up. It's definitely going to be a good one. Let me just check back at the hands. Okay, only a few hands going up, so it sounds like most people were okay. Okay, a few more going up. All right, well, we'll take a look at those responses, and if the majority rules, then we'll pop some written answers up on the website for you. There were a couple of questions that came in during the session today. Sorry we didn't have time for those. Those will roll over to next week's clinic, so make sure you join us. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.